Welcome back to the Geekly. My name is Jules.
I'm Lex.
Today we want to start by saying Merry Holidays.
Happy winter.
Happy winter. If you like what you hear, there are loads of ways that you can help us without spending a penny.
First, you can leave us reviews on iTunes, Spotify, and we're also on Podchaser now. It's podchaser.com/thegeekly. Really easy to find.
You can subscribe to us everywhere. You can obviously tell your friends. Word of mouth really benefits us. Or, if you really like what you hear, you can obviously find us on a Patreon.
Yeah, it's patreon.com/geeknerd. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/geeknerdpod and Facebook.com/thegeekly. Plus, we have a pretty nifty website, geeknerdpod.com, where we also have a directory for marginalized creators called Project Bedlam, so check that out.
Let's start with some polls.
All right.
I ran 2 polls this week. First one was, which trailer are you most excited for? Wonder Woman, Black Widow, No Time to Die. It's not really much of a surprise. Wonder Woman won with 50% of the vote.
Yeah, that's the one I voted for.
Yeah, I think that's the one where people are most interested in. I was really looking forward to the James Bond one, which came out today. Really enjoyed it.
See, I haven't been a huge fan of Daniel Craig as James Bond. I've tried really hard to like him as James Bond, but it doesn't work for me. And so I've kind of ignored every film that I see them, but I don't get super excited about them.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm actually really curious to see who's going to take over. We know most of the big English actors at the moment. It's difficult to see a clear frontrunner.
It would be nice if they just went with a complete unknown, got somebody kind of early on in their career, locked them in for, a decade or so, and then kind of moved on to the next one.
The next question that I posed, the Geekyverse, Batman vs Superman was all I said. Batman vs Superman. 33% of the vote went to good. 30% of the vote went to bad. 22% of the vote went to awful. And 15% of the vote went to amazing. So it's 48-52. 48 for kind of positive, 52 for negative. So it's still, a few years on, still a very divisive film.
It's about 3 films in one, so depending on which film you're watching, some of the films are good, some of them are not so good. Personally, for me, if you took out the Batman versus Superman part, it would be a pretty decent film.
Let's start with Titans. I've got to ask you a question. How often do the super fam get either brainwashed, corrupted, mind-controlled, or just generally possessed or taken over by the enemies?
Oh my god, so many times. They should just be locked up or confined somewhere, or somebody needs to invent some sort of inhibitor that keeps them from being brainwashed or mind controlled, because that's the first thing everybody does. Oh, there's a super soldier, let's figure out a way to get them under our control. It happens all the time.
Yeah, Man of Steel, Woman of Steel, oh, they're so strong, they're so invulnerable to everything, and just mind control.
Little mind control wave. Boop.
Supergirl season 1, final episode, Superman was Tyler Hoechlin's Superman was mind controlled. We recently watched Hush, where Poison Ivy controlled Superman, and in this, Superboy mind controlled by Cadmus.
And in Justice League, it wasn't really mind controlled, but Superman did kind of he was a little bit weird when he came back from the dead, and they had to bring Lois Lane in.
Bringing the big guns. I think that's what Bruce said. Do you know who never gets mind controlled? Batman. Obviously the superior superhero. Although according to Robert Pattinson, he's not actually a superhero. Let's not start down there. Let's talk about Dick's suit. Deathstroke, bullets everywhere. Dick lands on top of the vehicle, a very Batman thing to do. What did you think of the suit?
I think the suit's great. I commented on it last week because I saw the set pictures of it, and it looks very much like the comic books, so I was happy about that.
And that's all you can really hope for, isn't it? You want something comics accurate.
Yeah.
He has his little electric batons as well. He and Rose fought against Deathstroke.
And this is the only part of the episode that I actually enjoyed. I'm going to bring up Daredevil again because, I always bitched about the acrobatics and Daredevil's fighting. This fight scene was an instance where acrobatics actually worked. Nothing that Dick did seemed superfluous or just trying to be fancy. He even did the spinny sidekick at one point that I absolutely hated when Daredevil did it, but in this context, because of the character, it actually really fit. So yeah, the fight scene with Deathstroke was great. It just happened and ended in the first 5 minutes. Yeah,
I wrote down a great comics accurate fight. Really enjoyed it, and that's kind of where the positives end, because throughout this whole episode, it's littered with issues for me. Again, aesthetically, Titans always looks great, but the kind of thought process, I always wonder what kind of... Did they throw dartboard to kind of choose what's going to happen next? 15 minutes into this TV show, Deathstroke, from episode 1 to now, the big bad, and Rose stabs him and kills him.
Yeah,
and that's it.
We had two kind of big bads in this season. We had Deathstroke and we had Cadmus. And before we got to the halfway mark in the episode, both of them were cleared off the board in very underwhelming ways. I think it was great that Rose killed her father and took Jericho into herself. Presumably they're going to have like a Killer Frost, Caitlyn kind of situation going on. I think it was probably a really powerful moment that she killed him, but it happened way too fast. And meanwhile, like, everybody else was just sitting in the fucking car. Like, you have Wonder Girl in there, and she's just, like, what is she doing? Just watching.
That came and went. Deathstroke, the, amazing, invulnerable, unkillable Deathstroke, killed fairly easily within the first 15 minutes. Then we have Gara as the Green Tiger going up against Connor. Rachel touches Gar's hand. Suddenly, the mind control, the brain surgery, whatever they put inside him, gone, forgotten about.
See, I could have bought that if it was like a mind control thing, but the fact that they did actual physical surgery, unless she went in and like reorganized his brain completely, which, I think she could do, but they needed to kind of show a little bit more than her just like, okay, I'm going to touch your hand because it worked when you touched my hand way back when.
Yeah.
Like, it fell flat for me.
Yeah, and that's essentially what Rachel did to Connor. She allowed Dick somehow to talk to Connor's subconscious or something while he was being possessed, showed him the light. Suddenly Connor's fine as well. And here we are, 22 minutes into the 44-minute episode, and everything's resolved. And then Dawn goes to get his little kid's toy. The thing falls down, and Donna dies, essentially.
There's no reason she should have died in that way. One, the like freak accident after the fact was just kind of frustrating. Two, she's an Amazon. Like, I'm pretty sure that Wonder Woman's been electrocuted and survived.
Donna's death is the death I understand the least, and I believe the one that hurts the show the most. Other than Dick, she was obviously the strongest, most developed character, believable as a leader for this team if Dick ever sort of disappeared.
I think she balanced Dick out a lot as well. Like, again, kind of like Batman and Wonder Woman.
Absolutely.
She's kind of the heart and the moral compass, and he's kind of the action and fists.
Yeah. And I'm not being funny, but there will never be a better opportunity to kill off Dawn and or Hank. Dawn is there. The thing's about to fall on her. Donna catches it to save Dawn. But there was this moment where Hank's like, Dawn! And you think he's going to run in to save her. And they would got both electrocuted because they feels like they've both served their purpose at this point.
Oh, definitely. And Hank's arrival when the four women were first confronting Connor, and Hank just comes out with this ridiculous hammer thing. The entire action was just purely comical. So you have this very serious, intense moment where they're squaring off, getting ready to fight, and then Hank just sort of drunkenly stumbles in, and like he can actually take on Connor. He can barely take on a regular criminal, let alone, a super criminal. I mean, well, not that Connor's a criminal, but although, can we talk about the fact that, like, how many people has he killed at this point?
It's quite a high kill count at this point. Bruce hasn't even taken an interest.
He showed up for dinner, though.
Yeah.
And, like, everything's cool and fine. God, I have so many issues with this episode.
Yeah. I mean, it was such a peculiar way to end a season because everything's been built up and we thought finally the big battles are going to happen, and literally halfway through, everything was resolved, and the final 22 minutes were kind of a debrief, a kind of tease of what's coming next season. Them all kind of deciding they still want to be a team because something was happening in the city, and they all kind of got up from dinner to go and deal with it. I don't know what I was expecting, but it wasn't this.
I expected the showdowns between Deathstroke and Cadmus to be much bigger.
Oh, yeah.
And possibly to have a little bit of overlap. I was actually quite shocked when Deathstroke died, and, like, I don't think it was even the first 15 minutes. It was, like, the first 10 or something. It was, like, super fast. And I was like, okay, so they're going to do a whole huge thing about Cadmus. And then, like, 10 minutes later, that's resolved. And it was like, okay, what the fuck is going on?
I personally would have wanted them the other way around, because Cadmus, to me, was okay, you've taken over Gar and you've taken over Con. Like, I don't particularly care. Obviously, Cadmus, we know, is a big thing in the comics. But I wanted Deathstroke to be the kind of big final boss, I guess, that maybe all the team had to get together to kill.
The anticlimactic nature of both of those things robbed Donna's death of any real weight or emotional impact beyond the fact that we know she's just going to be resurrected. That just leaves the question of why did she die in the first place? I mean, I've seen some people suggest that, like, if Rachel finds a way to bring her back, we'll get a very different Donna Troy than we got this season. But even still, like, I don't see the purpose of her death. Yeah, so overall, a very underwhelming season finale of Titans. Bit disappointed, expected something bigger. Don't really know why they made any of the decisions they made. But they had a decent fight scene for about 5 minutes. Alright, so let's talk about The Mandalorian.
I just want to ask you generally, like, what are your thoughts on the show taking this particular direction? Because we talked about last week that my fear was that there'd be a problem of the week, a bounty hunter of the week. We've kind of got that this week on a very aesthetically different planet. It reminded me of Vanaheim from the first scene of Thor: The Dark World, kind of farming, very beautiful place, like all huts and kind of not very technological, I guess. I'm slightly concerned. This structure's not appealing to me that much. I just hope it's not, a bounty hunter every week is what I'm saying. I don't know, I thought it was a little bit flat. This is probably my least favourite episode.
The quality didn't go down. It just was a little routine, I guess is the word for it. I was a little bit worried at one point in this episode that they were going to stay on this planet for a while and not much was going to happen. So I'm glad that the bounty hunter did show up in the end and they decided they had to move on. We got a little bit more background about the Mandalorian. We saw him connecting with a few people. I liked the soldier he teamed up with. I thought they made a great pair, and I sort of wished that she'd joined.
Oh, me too. What a mistake. I mean, kill her off or let her be part of the team. My vote would have been let her be part of the team, but it seemed odd that they would just part ways after that.
The only thing I can hope for is that at some point later down the road they reunite because she was a really great character.
Oh, so good. Was she the woman from Deadpool?
Which woman from Deadpool?
The big fight at the end.
Oh, I don't know.
I thought she might have been the woman from Deadpool. I didn't actually look it up on IMDb, but she fought, was it Colossus?
Oh yeah.
I thought it might have been her.
It might be. She looked very similar.
Very similar, yeah. I didn't IMDb it, unfortunately, but she was great, so good. And I just feel like she and the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda going around, maybe acquiring a few more waifs and strays throughout the season or the next season, creating a little family unit. I would have been into that.
Yeah.
But she will be missed. And they did the whole until our paths cross again handshake thing. So she'll come back, but I think that's an opportunity missed.
I saw a few things online before I watched the episode of people complaining about the single mother whose name I can't remember. One, people were upset that she was the only one in the village who could shoot. And
why?
Because she's a woman.
I'm not sure what answer I was expecting, but probably should have been that one.
Yeah, way to go, Star Wars community. You are so progressive. And the other thing was they felt that there was a shoehorned romance.
There was no romance.
I know.
There was no trace of romance.
I mean, the soldier sort of suggested that he could stay and marry the widow and live a happy life and whatever, but that was about the closest it got to romance. Beyond that, it was just him connecting with another person.
Absolutely.
And
she tried to take his helmet off. He said no.
Yeah.
I mean,
that was
what
the
else
end
is
of
there
it.
to say, really?
It was no, I'm not. And he even said, I don't belong here. So I found that kind of weird because, I mean, we do in a lot of the shows we review talk about these shoehorned in romances. And so
this was not that.
This was not that at all.
Have you watched Supergirl, people? Jesus.
I know, they're pairing her up every time we turn around. So those were the two criticisms that I saw about the episode. But that was going to be my question: is did you feel that there was a shoehorned romance in this? But
no, I mean, not remotely. My criticisms of this episode, it was very one-dimensional, quite superficial, quite dull. The idea of train. I mean, even recently I saw an episode of Barry where he trains these Russians to be prepared for this oncoming invasion. That's a very overdone kind of thing. We teach the locals how to fight and defend themselves.
And this ragtag bunch of misfits manages to
and I mean, they
win
rolled
the day.
with fucking sticks up against blasters for most of it. It was pretty unbelievable in points, but I just thought it was very dull.
I think kind of the central theme at the moment is the interaction between the Mandalorian and Baby Yoda. Again, we got to see kind of his human side in this and thinking about what was actually best for Baby Yoda, and even though it was really dumb because obviously bounty hunters are going to be looking for him, and you're going to leave him with a bunch of farmers who just learned how to fight.
And I mean, it was because a few of them referred to him as like your boy or your son at points.
Yeah.
He didn't correct them. There is a relationship there, and it's very nice to see.
And he did take off his helmet in this episode, and
which was really peculiar because they were all there. They could have just turned around and seen his head.
I was expecting him to draw curtains or something, but no, he sits in the window with all the curtains open, the door open, and he just takes off the helmet. And we still don't see his face, which I really appreciate. I thought it was a really great way to do that, and I liked that the widow was sensitive to, because everybody else was sort of everybody he comes across sort of makes fun of him for not taking off his helmet, and she was very sort of sensitive to, oh, I'll put you food inside so that you can eat, or I brought you this for when I go, and I thought that was really cool moments between them. Maybe that's what people interpreted as romance. If you're thoughtful towards another person.
Seriously, go and watch the Arrowverse. You'll die. You'll just explode, I think.
Up until this episode, they built up some really good momentum, and this one kind of was a little bit like treading water. So hopefully next week will be a little bit more eventful. Let's move on to His Dark Materials.
I thought this was a much better episode than the previous two. I've also got some slight problems with it as well. We're getting a lot of Will Parry and a lot of, I guess, R-Earth. And every season, there are going to be 3 seasons of this, 8 episodes each. And I felt all of what could be episode 201, the first of the second season, was here in this episode, because Will Parry doesn't arrive until book 2, and I felt we had a lot of stuff about him. The books may run sort of concurrently, but I'm concerned that season 2 might have to stretch some of the material out, because it's not a particularly long book. I don't think any of them are. The third is the longest.
I think this is probably my least favorite episode of the season, largely because of the amount that we got of Will and our world. Just to start off with, Lyra's world is far more interesting than ours.
Absolutely.
Because we know all the rules to our universe.
Yeah.
There's no mystery there. It's just the normal, everyday, run-of-the-mill world. We know that. So just starting off on the baseline, they needed to do something really spectacular in our world to make it as engaging as Lyra's world. But in this episode in particular, Lyra's storyline was far more impactful and far more emotive than Will's. So that just ups the game even more, and I felt like Will's parts were a distraction rather than an integral part of the episode. We didn't get anything relevant or pertinent or important in this episode.
Yeah, and I looked it up as well. He does not appear till book 2. I thought, have I forgotten something? Did I forget he was in this? But I mean, you can understand episode 8 of season 1. Oh, who's this new character going to be introduced in the next season? But episode 4 of season 1 is, because presumably he's going to be in more episodes, which is crazy. Because
Lord Boreal is now kind of stalking his family.
Yeah.
It seemed like a really bizarre time to introduce this character in this way. And as I was watching it, because every scene with him was basically just kind of the same thing of showing his mother with some sort of PTSD or phobias or something going on with her, and him kind of being a caretaker, and the kids at school making fun of him, and it felt like your run-of-the-mill family drama. And then they would switch over to Lyra, which was just captivating and magical, and the two were not equal in any way, shape, or form.
Let's talk about the captivating. Let's talk about the storyline in Lyra's world. Alethiometer. Lyra goes to this fishing village. There's a ghost there. She doesn't know how to interpret ghost. I think it must be a little symbol for ghost. And she goes there and she finds Billy Costa with no demon. And that was such a fucking savage. Several scenes in a row. Billy, obviously not quite a ghost, more like a zombie. His soul has been separated from him. He's not dead. He doesn't have any kind of visible wound, but he may as well be missing a limb. Lyra is able to put him on the back of Yorick Bernderson. They head back to the camp where all the Egyptians are, and he dies in his mother's arms. Fuck me, that was savage. That was incredible TV. That was a more impactful scene that I think we've seen in the last 2 or 3 episodes.
Like he didn't just die. She sat there and she gave him permission to go. Tony Costa was there and kind of both of them were just bawling their eyes out, and he took the kind of last shuddering brush. But yeah, it was incredibly impactful. And to be honest, I thought they were going to save him, or at least I didn't think we would get to this point so quickly.
I've never talked to you about this, but I imagine you're a fan of a funeral pyre.
I am a big fan of a funeral pyre.
It was so right for Egyptians, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was so spot on, and they all kind of gathered round. And then, like you said, then we're with Will Parry, and suddenly everything is back to kind of our world, and it's so boring. Such high emotional stakes happening in Lyra's world, and suddenly we're hanging out with Will while he's boxing at school.
It leaves me questioning, like, what they're going to be doing moving forward, and, like, if... I really hope we don't get more of this kind of half and half our world, Lyra's world thing. I don't really want to spend a lot of time in our world. It was kind of cool when they first showed glimpses of it, but the, like, half and half thing, giving them equal screen time, it just... I think they should have just left it saying that there would be a boy who would be important, and maybe given us like one scene of him or just a shot of him walking to school or whatever to like say this is the person. But we really didn't need the number of scenes that we got.
It ended with Lyra being kidnapped again, taken to Bolvanga, and she was basically shown the uniform that she found Billy in, and so she knows exactly where she is. She knows exactly what's about to happen to her unless she's saved or she manages to kind of use her wits to get out of there. That must be a pretty terrifying realization.
Like, it was terrifying for me. Like, I felt sick watching this, knowing that they wanted to like sever her demon from her, and it was just, I was hoping that there would be some indication that she was about to be saved before we got to the end of the episode, but of course there wasn't. Presumably she will be saved or she'll get out of it somehow, but particularly coming off of like seeing the effect of the separation on Billy Costa, and then having Lyra put in that same situation and knowing that it's like about to happen imminently any second, it definitely raises the stakes for her and for the show, and again just highlights that the stuff that's happening is happening in Lyra's world, and that's where we need to be.
Yeah, I think this show's done quite a good job of showing us what the relationship is between demons and humans, because we've seen demons battling, and we've seen how a demon being hit, the human will feel it. We've seen a demon being killed, then the human being killed. We've seen a human being killed that causes the demon to be killed. We've now seen what happens when they are separated, and they are both essentially zombies. We didn't see Rata, but presumably Rata didn't fare too well either. So we absolutely know, and I think that did help to kind of raise the stakes and instill a bit of fear in people watching, because Pantilimon is so cute.
I was just going to say that. He's just so cute, especially when he's like the little weasel ferrety thing. Yeah. He just like, he has such a pure little face, and you want to like squeeze the shit out of him.
I would kill Pantilimon if it made Baby Yoda smile for half a second. One final thing, I really liked Lee Scoresby this week. I think sometimes brand new characters burn so bright that they hurt your eyes, and I think he was just really shoved in our faces a bit last week. He was far less energetic.
He was a lot more subdued this week,
yeah.
Which, I mean, went with what was going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
He sort of was like a guardian for Lyra when they brought Billy Costa back, and she wanted to go and like be with the Costas, and he held her back and said, you know, they love you, but they don't want you there right now. Yeah. I kind of wish this was the first meeting that we'd gotten of him rather than what we got last week, because last week he just came across as like this kind of mouthy, loud, obnoxious con man, whereas there seemed to be more depth to him this week.
Okay, well, let's finish off with Watchmen. What did you make of this episode? A lot happened.
A lot did happen. We got to the end of the episode, and when she took the hammer, I was just sitting there thinking, what the hell is she going to do with the hammer? And then she beat her husband's skull in and pulled the little, like, Dr. Manhattan thing out of his head, and I just sat there and thought, like, what the fuck just happened?
The Superman walks among us, and he's American, isn't that what they say in the graphic novel? Something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I certainly didn't see that coming. There are a lot of liars on the internet who say they did see it coming. The 7th Cavalry somehow planned to capture him, somehow planned to kill him, and somehow planned to take on his powers. It's a bit of a rollercoaster ride, this show, isn't it? You never really know what's happening from one episode to the next. Huge, game-changing things thrown in that don't feel disorientating, but at the same time you're like, shit, like I did not see that coming. I have no idea what's going to happen next.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the greatest aspects of the show, is that it has all of these twists and turns, but none of them feel forced, none of them feel shoehorned in. like they all sort of feel like they've earned their place there, and even with like this revelation, obviously it shouldn't have been that much of a shock because we've had the idea sort of sewn in a few times in previous episodes that Dr. Manhattan isn't on Mars, he's actually walking on Earth somewhere, and it's been refuted because it's like, well, he can't look like us, so you know, how is he wouldn't be able to do that, that's ridiculous. And yet there he was. So it's kind of one of those things where they've been telling us something kind of repeatedly, and we've just accepted their excuses for why it can't happen, and then it turns out that it's actually true, and it's like, wow, what the fuck.
Somehow Will has stumbled across this plan by the 7th Cavalry. He's teamed up with Lady True because she has the money to try and stop this happening. Again, no idea how that's going to plan out. Possibly something to do with a big clock.
Yeah, because we've got the Millennium Clock now,
Yeah.
which obviously is going to play into it somehow, but we don't know how. So, like, you know, we're getting pieces of the puzzle, but we still don't really have enough to see the whole picture. And it shows the talent and the skill of the writers of the show that that's fine. I think in other shows, I know I get really frustrated by how information is conveyed. They either do this thing where they keep back way too much or they give you way too much. And Watchmen seems to have struck that perfect balance of like giving us just enough to keep going but still holding enough back that like there's a lot of intrigue, there's a lot of mystery, there's a lot of anticipation for what is going to happen next. And it builds up the excitement because like I can't wait to see the next episode because I want to know what happens.
We were given no answers for the first maybe 4 episodes.
Yeah.
And then they started feeding us the answers. And the answers never cheapened it. They never were more than we needed. Every answer that we've been given has created 10 more questions. And that's helped to build the intrigue a lot more. Some shows, yeah, you never get answers. And they think, well, that's it. That is the show. We just want you to feel intrigued the whole time. But you end up feeling a bit pissed off. So they picked the right moment to start giving us something.
Yeah, because it was exactly the right moment, because the week before they started giving us answers, I said,
yeah,
I need answers now. I need a few answers. And then the next week, right on cue, they took me right to that point of almost frustration, and then they started giving me things. So it was like perfectly paced.
Speaking of things we've no fucking clue how they're going to pan out or play out moving forward, Laurie went to see Mrs. Crawford, and basically...
Can I just say, like, that was one of my favorite scenes?
That was superb, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was great. Like, Laurie's sitting there doing her, like... I don't think she's ever not had the upper hand in a conversation
Probably
before.
true, yeah.
And then, like, Mrs. Crawford is just like, yeah, you're right. And it was like, oh, sorry, was I not supposed to confess yet?
Yeah.
And then you have, like, the perfect, like, supervillain thing. There's a what's it called? Trapdoor. Trapdoor in her living room.
Yeah. And the fact that it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
It was like a Dr. Evil thing where, like, the button just doesn't work. And eventually, at the 4th time or something, she finally falls through the floor. She's now down that trapdoor. God knows what's going to happen there.
Jeremy Irons is just phenomenal. Like, yeah. I love every scene with him in it.
Day 365 of the trial. At this point, I think they're kind of telling us that a year is passing every time we see him.
I thought it was like a thing where he got a cake every day.
Every day, yeah.
Which is not overly bright on my part, but, you know.
I just want to know if he's going to get out of here and somehow he's going to meet up with Dr. Manhattan. And Laurie will be there and the three of them will stand together, which will be quite a nice moment. Obviously, Owlman's in jail, Rorschach's dead.
Unless it's just for the novelty of it, and like given everything that Watchmen is as a show, I can't imagine that the writers would put in something so superfluous as just, you know, this has nothing to do with the main storyline. So I imagine at some point he is going to get out and have some sort of interaction with Dr. Manhattan, potentially stopping the 7th Cavalry or some other thing that we have yet to foresee, which I'm not discounting either.
Yeah, Lady True's daughter, who was actually her mother, when she talked about her father, she said he's coming soon. Yeah. I did wonder if that was Adrian. That's maybe why they've got the statue of him. So I think they're all going to team up at some point. But yeah, to do what? How? It's so up in the air. From one episode to the next, it's not like we get an answer to a question we have. We get an answer to a question we didn't even consider. We get information that we couldn't possibly have known was coming, and that's okay. I've got a question for you. When Mrs. Crawford says that now they consider the presidency to be small potatoes, what do you think is the end game for that senator? Is he becoming Dr. Manhattan? Are they, the 7th Cavalry, going to like take Dr. Manhattan, They talk about killing him, taking his powers. Is he going to be the new vessel, I guess, for these powers, or is there something else?
I think that's the plan. And definitely from his perspective, he wants to have Dr. Manhattan's capabilities and kind of take over the world.
And as we know, Ozymandias has beaten Dr. Manhattan. He's got that on his resume. So if you need someone to beat another Dr. Manhattan, presumably he's going to come back and save the day. It might be a redemption story. Do you think that would be strange? Probably, because he killed 3 million people. But I guess maybe now he will be saving however many billion people.
I think the character has to want to be redeemed for it to be a redemption story.
Probably true. Yeah, probably true.
And I don't see that factoring in at all. Because he still very much believes that what he did was for the greater good. So I could see him, stepping up to help save the world again for the greater good, but I don't see it as a redemption story.
Fair enough. I kind of feel like I want to go back now and watch them all in a row. Because I feel like there's so much I've missed.
After the season is over, I'm going to go back through it and watch the whole thing and just kind of do it in a couple chunks probably.
Yeah, I might try and do it in the run-up to the final episode maybe. It's really enjoyable and it's just not what I expected at all. I did expect something very good, but this is something also very good, but totally different to how I thought it would be delivered. So.
Yeah, I think back to our first review and our review of the first episode, and I was just kind of puzzled and confused, and I didn't really know how I felt about the show. And now, Watchmen is easily my favorite show that we do, which is saying something because there are a lot of high quality shows out there. His Dark Materials, Titans, and
The
Mandalorian are all exceptional shows, but Watchmen is just
it's got a bit of a swagger to it.
It does.
It kind of knows its audience really well. Thank you for listening, and if you like what you've heard, tell your friends. We've had a nice spike in downloads recently, and we want that to keep going, so if you know anybody that likes this kind of thing, tell them. I think we were listened to in Malta this week. We were listened to in Palestine last week. So, yeah, thanks for listening.
All right, see ya.
See ya.